Welcome to our Recent Engineering Alumni Council hosted session with the incredible Lisa Tong. She's a UW alum, ex-corporate consultant, now an entrepreneur, coach, author, and facilitator. Um, our Recent Engineering Alumni Council, we love chatting with Lisa. She actually volunteered some time with us last year to coach our council through some techniques that she'll talk through in her book Hello World, actually Hello Me. Um, and how this session will go today, we'll do the introduction and territorial acknowledgement. I'll go over a brief bio of Lisa if you don't know who she is. Then we'll do sort of a fireside chat, Q&A, and discussion. Lisa's going to talk us through her journey, how she went from corporate chemical engineering graduate to the incredible person she is now, and what it means to discover yourself. We'll do a Q&A after all of that, and then we'll end with some closing remarks. So if you're not familiar with the Recent Engineering Alumni Council, it's made up of volunteer Waterloo Engineering alumni, ideally new grads to graduates within the last 10 years. We're working to support the strategy, design, and implementation of a more robust young alumni program at Waterloo Engineering and fostering a really strong, well-connected student and alumni community. We've heard over and over again that the cohort system at the University of Waterloo really builds really strong connections, and graduating and leaving that into the adult working world can feel a little alienating and isolating sometimes, especially if you're not working in a place where there's lots of other UW alum that you're familiar with. But I think it's interesting. This topic is really interesting and core to me personally, because while a strong component of our identity is engineers, especially through the 5 years of education we get at the University of Waterloo, we're also significantly more than that. In fact, when I think about myself, engineer isn't really even like the top of the list of things that I would self-identify with. So I'm really excited for our conversation today. Before we get started, the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of their work takes place on the traditional territories of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. The university's main campus is located on the Haldimand Tract, which is the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. The university's active work towards reconciliation takes place across all campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. Identity, it really matters to people. And so our speaker today, Lisa, incredible ex-corporate consultant, engineer turned entrepreneur, best-selling author, speaker, professionally trained and certified coach, and facilitator. She founded this project called Me, a personal development company that supports people in developing stronger self-awareness. She also published this book, Hello World Me. Oh, I realize the Zoom camera, which I've been reading and have found very thought-provoking, and really asked me some questions that have made me think really deeply about myself. So while this is just one part of Lisa, if she's not writing or coaching, you'll likely find her cycling or making soups for her other fun persona, the Chinese soup lady. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Adele. All right. So before we begin, what we're going to do is just try a fun exercise. And I'm going to share screen, Adele, if that's
Perfect.
okay. All right, great. All right. So here we go. What we're going to do today is there's going to be a poll. And this is the exercise that I want you guys to think about. So it's very simple. On a scale of 1 to 10, so when the poll comes up, you just need to select a number between 1 and 10. 1 is a no. Absolutely not. So it's quite binary in the sense 0. 10 is a yes. It's your 1, right? So 1 is no, I will not go. So this is the question. And 10 is yes, I will go. So we're going to ask you 3 words. And essentially, the question is, hey, we're going to go grab dinner after this session. Are you coming? Right? And so when the word pops up on a scale of 1 to 10, no to yes, what does the word mean to you? Right? And that's just whatever it is. There's no right or wrong answer. Whatever comes first, initially, your instinct, just select that one. All right. All right. So, Carrie, if you could share the poll, that'd be great. So, the first one is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being no, 10 being yes. What does the word likely mean for you? Where does it sit on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 is no, I'm not going to dinner. 10 is yes, I'm going to be there. Likely, I will likely go. All right. The second one is perhaps. on a scale of 1 to 10? When you say perhaps, is that a yes or no, that scale? And finally, the third one is probably. Where does probably sit for you on a scale of 1 to 10? And this is just a fun little exercise for us to go through. All right, we'll give it like a minute for everyone to decide. There's no right or wrong answer.
I love that you say there's no right or wrong answer, yet my engineer brain immediately is like, what is the exact definition of these words?
Yeah, and this is what we're going to get to. And this is what I love about this exercise is what it means to you is probably different what it means to me. Culturally, there's an impact. So I've done this across multicultural teams. Fascinating. And then even age, huge, like between generations, very honest with you. Big difference also in understanding as well. It's fast, but it's the same word, right? That's the part that really blows my mind. So, all right, we can show the answers. Okay, let's see. Okay, first one, likely. Okay, look, 5%. So 1 out of 19 votes. Let's take just the 19. One person says likely is a 3. That means the chances of them going is less than 50%. While there's someone actually that says 10. That means they're going to show up, whereas the 3 is not going to show up, right? It's the same word. So if the 3 asks the 10, are you going to dinner? And the 10 says likely, the 3 might think, oh, they're not going to go. Right? So isn't the same word, right? Let's look at the second one. The second one is perhaps. I really like how the deviation is actually quite wide. This is amazing. Perhaps is 2 versus a 7. That's a big difference. And then probably 4 to 10. That's huge, right? The spread that we're talking about of the same word can be so different. I love this. And you know what? I really want to take a screenshot, but we have it recorded. So this is good. All right. So I'm going to close this. So just sit with that for a bit. And what I'm coming to is this next piece, even more fascinating. All right. So we assume that there's got to be some generic answer, right? I mean, the dictionary has an answer. So why don't we go and ask ChatGPT? And I did. So I asked version 3 back then is, all right, when someone says probably, right? What do they mean? What's the chance that it'll happen? The first answer says here, okay, when one says probably, they're generally including indicating a high likelihood, but the exact percentage can vary depending on context and individual. However, probably typically implies likelihood of 70 to 90%. First answer. I asked it again. They said 60 to 90%. Great. Then I asked it again, and they said greater than 50%. So even AI or something that's generally widely considered, okay, some knowledge, still has a variance of answers, right? And this is amazing. It's amazing to understand, wow, the same word can have so many different meanings. And the whole point of this is to start, being self-aware of what your answer was. And why is that important? Well, when you're self-aware of what your answer is, I'm going to stop sharing first so you can all see me. When you're self-aware of your own answer, what typically happens is that we project that answer out without realizing it. Because my probably is actually an 8. And if I ask someone, hey, you're going to dinner tonight? They go, probably. I'll say, oh yeah, they're coming. But what if that person answered 3 or 4? They're not going to show up. But how would I know? I wouldn't know that, right? So just being self-aware of what your position, your understanding, your own internal dictionary first is actually a really great place to start when you think about what excites me, what I want to do for my life, what I want to do now in my life, where am I going? And then being aware that everyone else has their own internal dictionaries as well. And our dictionaries very often aren't the same. And that's where communication comes in play, right? And that's another piece. But just being aware of your own answers, right? Just knowing that, oh gosh, there's, my probably is an 8, my likely is whatever, right? But if to really sit down and think about your answers, I think that's really important. And that's the first step to self-awareness. So I'm going to continue sharing. And so how you become self-aware to help you move into more, right? And the whole point of this is really like we talk about finding your highest excitement. That's one piece. Is really don't hold expectations. That's the first thing about moving towards finding something you love. So as Adele said, I've graduated as an engineer, went into corporate. So I did IBM, did a nonprofit, moved to Asia, and then went into retail right away. And then in that, really loved it, great experience, great exposure. And then at some point I was like, is this really what I want to do? But at the same time, I started Soup Lady while I was working. And I also went into coaching while I was working. Then I launched a coaching academy while I was working. And the whole time, just really just playing, right? And I think these principles is really what I lean into. So the first is not holding any expectations, right? Really is like none. Expectations actually limiting. And it's funny because expectations sometimes are actually given to us. Think about that. Are we born with expectations? That's just a question. What do you think? Are we born with expectations? No, none of us are actually. Expectations are imprinted from our parents, from society, from peers, right? And then so what happens is, and we shape these expectations and they become limits. So the other one is really creating mirrors. Like, can I see myself, right? Can you truly see like what I love to do and why I love to do it? And I'll talk about how to drill down and some of the questions to think about when you're trying to find that thing. And one example is a lot of people I know say, I love cooking. A lot of people can start with that statement. Let's work with that. That'll be my example for about how I ended up doing the Soup Lady. The other piece is actually just holding self-judgment. And it's really, can you accept yourself? This is a big one. And a lot of us might say, of course I can. But when you drill down further, there's moments where disappointment, that is an indication of non-acceptance. All right. So those feelings, those things like that is self-judgment already. And then finally, at the very end, with really finding what you really want to do, there's no right or wrong answer at the end because only you define that. Is what am I learning through it? And I'll talk about how like I ended up doing all the things I did. And one of the questions we're going to answer later is, so we had pre-questions. Some of you sent in questions ahead of time, and one of them is actually quite fascinating. It's about, is there anything you regret? And I'm going to answer that later, talking about exactly this. It's quite, my perspective is quite unique in it, and I'll explain that later. But really at the very end is like, you know what? I've not failed anything, actually. I've not failed myself at all. All I've done is I've learned something, right? So for example, my coaching school business, I ran for about 3 years. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm too busy. Out of all things going on, it wasn't my highest excitement at that time. I'm going to let it go. So I didn't really fail the business, right? I learned that it's something I chose not to do right now. And that's it. Move on, right? So that's kind of just like an overview of how being self-aware is really helpful in this. And the very simple exercise that we did with like probably, likely, maybe, you could go on with all the words in the English language, there's so many of them, is a piece to start, right? And just checking in with yourself. All right, so moving on here, just to quickly go through my story really quickly. And the reason why I'm showing this is because I want to tell people that there's no right way to live your life. There's no standard way of doing a career. There's no standard way of being anything. It's your life, right? Who is to say whether it's right or wrong? Only you, actually, right? When we feel resistance, we're like, well, we shouldn't. The word shouldn't is already judgment. And here's the thing that you can try, like going forward, like in meetings going forward, is how many times do we use the word should? I should. they should, you should, we should, right? That's actually, should, the word is actually already a form of judgment. And so being really aware of what we say is important as well. And so I'm saying here, right? There's no right or wrong. This is just how I showed up. Some of it's accidental, but following certain principles, which I'll talk about as well. So started corporate as soon as I graduated, and all the like the little dots are the changes that I've done. And I have jumped my career quite a bit, I'll admit. None of it engineering. So just to be clear, I'm an engineer by degree, but I don't think I'm an engineer by trade or by profession. I don't have my PEY, my professional engineering. Don't even know what that is when I came back. I do now, but I'm like, no, I'm not interested, right? And so, yeah, that's okay, right? And so, whatever it is, that's how it shows up. And the whole time I was working, I actually did actively choose to quit my corporate role in 2023 because I think it was a moment for me based on all the other options I had going on that were more exciting. And of course, when you get to a certain point, in your career, you're just like, okay, I think I can move on. Mom in 2206. Oops, I'm missing a dot here. There's another one, 208. And then Chinese soup lady was really, all right, I'm going to start something because I love it. Right. And so I started that really early on. And all these little blue dots in here are like things I tried with it. And I've learned I don't really like it that much. And I'll talk about this. Like, for example, I was like, hey, I'm going to go make soup packs. That'd be fun. Right. And so I really bought the equipment just to try and test. And then I made it, put out some samples to say, all right, who wants to order? They came in and I was like, I don't enjoy a a pull model business, which means someone orders, I have to fill. Someone orders, I have to fill. So I'm learning that I don't like being told what to do. Right. And so the business models I've set up actually contribute to me not following a schedule. Even though I'm very structured as an engineer, type A personality, but actually behind the doors, maybe that's why I don't like it. Right. And so I've learned I don't like the order model. I don't like people ordering and then me fulfilling. And I'll talk more about what businesses that allowed me to create instead. And then fine, triathlete is another role. We have so many roles. And the thing I do want to share that's quite interesting is that you have an infinite amount of use out there. Let me pause that again. There are an infinite amount of views out there because who your mom, so for example, let's say your mother, she sees you as a certain type of person. Your father's going to see you as a different type of person with a different experience. Your brother, sister, sibling is going to experience you as a different type of person from who your mom and your dad experience you as. Your boss is going to experience you as a very different person as well. And so it's true. There are infinite versions of you that exist because you don't know how they see you. And therefore, who's the real you? Well, only you will know because you're the one who's creating that version. Right. And so that's the interesting thing that I've learned over just seems like, whoa, who am I really? Well, I'm different people to different people at different times of my life. And people will remember you differently as well. So my daughter remembers me when she's 12. She's like, well, you're like this, like this, like this. I'm like, but I'm not like that anymore. She's like, but I remember you like that. Right. And so a version of me exists in her when she was 12. And she keeps telling me this. I'm like, but I'm not like that. She goes, but that's how I see you. So I'm trying to change it, but I can't. Right. And so that's the fascinating part. Coaching business. So at some point I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try this. Right. And I'll get to it is you have to try. You will never know if you like broccoli or don't like broccoli unless you take a bite. Or what about peas, Brussels sprouts, right? What about certain melons, right? There's so many Asian melons, right? Like the fuzzy melon or the bitter melon. How will you know you don't like it or do like it unless you try? And that's where I'll encourage you. Just like entrepreneurs, and we'll hear this all the time, like they fail 99% of the time. And this is why. It's because they're trying, they're trying, they're trying. It's not because they're not successful, it's because they're learning where they want to lean in. So it's not failure. I'm not a fan of that word. It's just learning. And so with coaching, I'll talk about what I'm doing in coaching as well and what the various aspects are that as well. And then the coaching academy is what I also tried as well and learned from it. And then now doing a lot of advisory boards, mentorships as well. And then like, I'm going to go, dip my toes at being an author. Right. And so it's like never ending. Right. So I just collect these things as I go along and they shape who I am. But who am I really? I don't know. Right. Who are you really? Well, that's for you to find out in this life through experimentation, through trying. Yeah. So if you have questions or any thoughts, just drop them in and we'll be just sourcing through them.
Yeah.
Adele, is there a
Um,
moment that we want to pause here and
I
see?
someone did ask if, what was your corporate career as and like, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, it's on LinkedIn, but very direct. So I went into IBM. So a lot of my work terms were non-chem eng. So I did a lot of IT because back then it was like the .com. So I went into IBM after graduation, did there for 3 years consulting, left. So I was consulting on commerce. So e-commerce
Mhm.
back then was really big. So it was all client work. And then I went into, then I left, went to Hong Kong, worked for a nonprofit for junior achievement, actually Hong Kong, junior achievement Hong Kong, which we have here
Yeah.
in Canada. Was there for about 3 to 4 years. Had my kids, and then I moved into Chanel. That's how I moved
Oh,
into
wow.
retail. Yeah, very fun industry. I really do love luxury in that sense, not the items, but the industry is fascinating. And then from there, I moved into Estee Lauder, which I've been there for about 12 years before I officially quit. And within Lauder's various roles, strategy, did M&As, did
Yes.
yeah. So it's not standard, right?
I mean, I think that's in some ways it's not, but in some ways it is, in that you moved from company to company to
Yeah,
company in
yeah.
increasingly more in roles with increasingly more responsibility. And I guess after 12 years at Estee Lauder, what made you decide to follow your highest excitement instead of keeping the same, not the same career, but continue to grow that part of yourself?
Mm. Yeah, I think I had enough like projects on my plate that there's a trade-off, right? At the end, we have
Mhm.
finite resources, time, capital, energy, right? And so I was like, where do I really want to spend my time now? And I had enough. And so some people say, if you're committed to a business, you got to quit your job and throw your whole house, mortgage it off, and go. That's one model. Great for you. I'm another model, right? I'm a little risk adverse, right? And so for me, it was just like full-time job, but trying this, trying that, right? And then as soon as things had some legs, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go, right? And so that was really it, right? It was like stay here or those things, and those things were more exciting. So I quit.
Ooh,
Yeah.
the word. Someone did ask, you were doing a lot of things at the same time, and given that full-time work can feel really consuming and energy
Mm,
and time draining,
mm.
how did you make the time to do other things? Was it just prioritizing, or was there a framework?
Okay, so one thing I will share that's really beneficial for living in Asia is we have domestic help. And so
Mm,
that's one thing that really did help at the height of my career doing all these things. There's a trade-off in that though, and I recognize this with my children and we talk about it, right? Um, However, the other thing is you can't always have everything at the same time. And I was very clear on my boundaries with work.
oh,
Yeah. I would say, no, I'm not going to take that. So, I mean, one of the tools that I do teach with people is always have my first question to you as corporate people is, do you have a list of what you're working on at all times and the capacity at which you're being utilized? You have to start with that because if you don't know whether you're overutilized, just right, or under, you have no argument to say, I can't take on more, right? And it's a data conversation. It's not personal. There are no emotions here. So I will always have a running list of, all right. And, if you have it live, it's a live document weekly, right? So I'll weekly say, okay, these are the projects on my plate. Here's what I'm estimating in capacity. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Fine. Include throw in the travel, all the meetings, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But if something new comes on, it's a discussion with my boss. It's like, hey, 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 this is new, but I will be giving you more work. And it's not their job to care actually.
Things and figuring out that distinction is important.
Yeah. So it's interesting that there's a limiting belief in a lot of us that if I don't take on more work, I won't get the promotion. It's a limiting belief, right? So exactly to what you said, if we disconnect that belief and say, let's debunk this myth in our own minds, right? How could I get a promotion? That's probably the statement. It's not about is it more work. How I get a promotion could also include, all right, doing big projects have impact, right? Making sure that I'm seen, heard,
Mhm.
contributing, team player. Those are all the components that contribute to this path. It's like math, right? Your building
Yeah.
blocks of a promotion. Is getting more work part of that building block? Work it backwards,
No.
right? Exactly. But yet we correlate that to we can't say no, right? And so I think that's where some of the limiting beliefs of younger people are because of authority, of
Mhm.
seniority, of this thought, well, to get the promotion, I need to say yes. But if you work it backwards, your mathematics, your mathematical building blocks of a promotion is not more work. So why do we
I will.
believe that to be true?
I guess that sort of leads into uh, self-awareness and knowing what makes
Exactly.
you the most, what has the most, I guess from the work perspective, it's like what has the most impact, but it's a similar thing to just self-awareness and understanding what you like to do, and whether you want to be promoted or not.
Yeah,
Um,
those are key questions too. And I think as you're younger, I think we all do want to get promoted because there's this lean of like higher salary paired with, job title, responsibility, leadership. And that's quite normal. Um, that's just how we discover ourselves
mhm.
and our egos. And that's okay. I encourage it. You have to know yourself and your ego. The ego has to exist. You cannot destroy or get rid of it. Then acknowledge it and say, yeah, I'm doing it because I want more money.
Mhm.
Make that statement, own it, right?
Mhm.
But then what are your building blocks to get there? Do you know?
When you decided, I mean, I haven't stalked your LinkedIn recently, haha. But when you were, at the peak of your corporate career, and then decided to quit, how did you decide and then do so in a way that didn't feel like you were just pulling a ripcord on this entire part of your life?
Well, I think maybe I had like all the other plugs in place already that I felt comfortable from a risk perspective that it wasn't too harming. Um, yeah. And sometimes right? And I know you asked about frameworks and stuff, and there was another question about frameworks is too. At the very end, the framework sits in our mind, right? Is there a
Mhm.
framework for the heart and what you truly want? That's just an open question. What do you think?
I would like logically, my engineering brain says yes. Frameworks for everything. They just make life easier and more
I know.
simple.
I know.
But when I reflect on crazy decisions I made in my life that I really, really made my life better or put me in a new direction, they were pretty spontaneous and kind of crazy.
There you go. That's your answer.
And so you just decided one day.
You know, you know, your heart, there's no framework for your heart.
how do I get better at, I guess, knowing that part of myself
Hmm.
or listening to know what is the highest excitement? I feel like it's easy to be drowned by stimulus, whether it's my phone or doom scrolling or watching TV. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask this then. If and I know we do because I scroll too, right? Maybe that is your highest excitement in that moment.
It just seems not very useful, productive. Ooh,
Who's judging that?
I am
Oh yeah.
self-judging.
Society as well, right? They say this,
Yes.
because you need to be productive. Really? For what? Right? Only you will know.
Mhm.
You will know that answer. And it's a lever, right? When your personal excitement for motivation is high enough, it'll tip and then you'll stop scrolling, right? And yes, there's some psychology studies, all scientific, around how, like the scrolling is self-gratifying, right? All that. Yeah, that's true too. And this is the world we live in. So that's okay.
There's a kindness there, I think, that,
To yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Lisa, what would you say to folks who feel like there's something in their way preventing them from following their highest excitements?
Mm, there's two things. So I thought about this answer about, all right, if I threw out this challenge and I do have it, is like, what's holding you back? There's two. And I was like, what else is there? The first is your own limiting beliefs, in that I should, again, the word should comes out. So again, right, write it down, right? If you see yourself saying should, or if you're talking to somebody, record it. Because you say, oh, I should do that, I should do this. And we say should so much. That's also self-judgment. So your own limiting beliefs. And the second one is other people's expectations. Seriously, it's what I call voice of the world versus voice of yourself. And there's too much voices of the world in us that have shaped us that we've kind of forgotten. And I think this is part of the journey, though. This is what it is, right? When you're born, you have no voice of the world on you. Nothing's imprinted. You just have you.
Mhm.
And why do children play with anybody? They don't care. Right? They play with anybody and anything
Yeah.
until someone tells them to start drawing in the lines. Then they go, oh, I have to do that. Then they forget, right? And so what happens is who we are naturally exists. Okay, I'm just going to put you exist. But what happens is we start building all these expectations, outcomes, what we should have, should be. They layer and layer and layer and layer until we're like, help, but you can't.
Yeah.
And I think that's part it's natural. It happens. We were born like to do that. And as you grow up and you can make choices because of self-awareness, you start to peel those layers and say, well, you know what? I don't want to be an engineer. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no, no.
But
Everyone's got their journey.
seriously, right? The whole time, like, I don't want to be an engineer. Why am I here? It's because my dad, right? So I
How,
peel that away.
and I guess like how did you do that? Like if I don't know what my highest excitements are, if I don't, how do I start? Like
Love it.
what do I do? I just feel
Okay,
so lost
let's go.
sometimes.
My next slide. Let me show. This is a great transition to my example and how you guys can get there. So I'm going to talk through. Let me move this out of. I'm going to talk through how I got to where I got to, and okay, I know it's a whole page of stuff, but let's start with. I'm shooting. All right. I love to cook. A lot of people love to cook. A lot of people love to bake, right? So when I say, what's your excitement? When I'm working with clients, like, I love baking, I love writing, I love traveling. Great. But did you know within cooking, how many functions or sub layers there can go? Let's break this down. All right. Is it a product? Is it a service? Do you like the education piece? Experimental? What other categories can you come up with? This is what you need to experiment with, right? Because you can't simply say, I love cooking. There's got to be something more to that. And so for me, all right, actually, what I loved was that my mom was teaching me knowledge that with Chinese soups, that my whole life growing up is like, what is that thing floating there? What is that white stuff there? Why does she keep making me want to eat that in the soup? And she tells me it's good for me, but why? Tell me why it's good for me. Right. And so for me, it was really a self-interest about why did with soups, right? And like all of our cultures have this is like our parents and grandparents saying, just eat it. It's good for you. But tell me why, right? And so that curiosity, right, was kind of like, okay, that's exciting for me. Just figure out why you tell me I have to eat this soup. And then now I have my own kids. What am I going to tell them? Right. And so that's where you have to experiment. And so, to be honest with you, with the Chinese soup lady, I've experimented with so many things around her persona and how I monetize. So I'm going to, and I know this is a question that people can say, but I need to eat and I need to make money and live. And I get it. I've been there, right? And so this is the other thing to work through is that, all right, you have to play with what works, what doesn't. And I'm actually have a page to really show you what pieces for me I've managed to monetize while I was working full time. So everything, all that money is actually just additional money that I was building. For me, right? Knowing, okay, can I get to a point where it's scalable enough that I'm happy? I don't need to live in like, the giant house. I don't care, right? I want to be happy and wake up when I want to wake up. And so this is where the experimenting is. And this is all the stuff I've tried. So within Chinese Soup Lady, I'm right. The cookbook is there, fine, right? Even like the recipes, the single sheets. I've tried the frozen soup packs, right? Put on order, try it. And I was like, no, I don't like this pull model. So the pull model for me is like someone orders, I fulfill. I don't like people telling me what to do. And I've learned I like the push model. So I like to just create things and just push. And somehow I'm able to monetize. And there are ways to do that, right? All right, then I was saying, all right, I'm going to do the dried soup pack. So I tried that for a bit where it was really like buying all the dried ingredients, sealing them, selling them. Then I thought, I'm going to do a dropship model. Basically, I'll work with a provider and I'm going to have them people order on site. The labels go to the supplier. They'll pack for me with my labels and everything and ship. So I went down that route. Then I went down affiliate sales, right? So affiliate sales could be ingredients, could be equipment, could be whatever, links, sources, all of that I've been trying as well. Then I went down the content route, right? It's basically writing. Okay, I love that. So I do it for fun, right? So I just write the contents, the recipes, the knowledge with TCM. So I was like, oh, I love that too. And so it was constant evolving because I was learning, right? And then I went with the blog, and then also, okay, let's go social media. Let's try that too. Then I started writing articles, and I was like, okay, let's do some paid links. And so within Chinese Soup, I went niche, 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 niche. And then I was like, that's what I want to do. And it's a space that I love. So that's how the Soup Lady evolved. And that's kind of where I am. I have a page I'll show you about the pieces that I'm able to monetize and really just grow it and do it as a business, right? But it didn't start out like that. I just want to start. So I'll have some tips, right? The thing is, none of this should start. Your excitement should not be about the money. Then you just say, I'm excited about money. That's different, right? And I know we all are, but that shouldn't be the reason why you're doing something, right? The highest excitement tends to be, I love it, even if I weren't paid. If I could do this all day and I'm not getting any money, I would still do it. That's kind of how you feel is the excitement, right? And here's another very simple example. People think it needs to be something that's big and bold and crazy and a business idea. Honestly, I've turned my mindset into like, oh, you know what? I actually at some point, my highest excitement will be to wash the dishes. Why? Because I love going to sleep with an empty sink, right? That's what drives me. It's like, you know what? I'm going to do it now so that my sink's empty, so I go to bed. And I'll wake up with a clean sink, right? That is my excitement at that moment. Or if I'm going to go for a walk, oh, I'm excited about doing a walk now. Yes, I'm going to go walk. Even doing a post. So I was doing a LinkedIn post this morning, just mentioning this. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to do this post. It's just a post, but I was excited about it at that moment. So that's with the Soup Lady as an example. And then with the coaching side, just going to pause here if there's any questions around that persona.
Not really,
Okay,
but I think once you're done this, I have some interesting feedback or questions from the audience that I'd
okay,
love to.
great.
It continues this thread.
Okay, perfect. All right. So here's another thread that I know a lot of people love. I love working with people. I love helping people. It's so common. And I know a lot of us have this. Great. Well, what does it look like? What does it show up? So at first I was like, well, I love meeting people. So MBA, the PMP, that's more technical. And I was like, hey, I want to take a course, but I wasn't sure what. So I went down, did I want to do, a PhD in psychology? Did I want to do therapy? Do I want to do whatever? And I was like, God, it's too long, right? Like 4 years to go back and do a degree. No way. So I was like, maybe coaching, but I was like, do I get certified? Not. So then explore that, right? And I just took the course for fun. I had no idea what it was, honestly. I had no clue what it was. I was just like, I'm going to try it. And then when I went into it, loved the people, loved the group, and realized that they didn't have a Canadian arm of the school that I was on. Hey, I want to try it. So I did, right? Launched the academy. It's tough work, but still loved it, loved teaching. Then I did coaching, which is like really coaching with executives. And that's, and I can talk about how that started, but basically I started for free, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to do free coaching. Any who wants to be my client, right? And I was just doing it for free, loved it. And then eventually you scale. And then I'll talk about also the price points and what to consider. Then I went to business coaching because like, oh, people are asking me like, how did I set things up? How to do things? Like, okay, fine, let's do that. And then I went into training, like 360 training is the 360 evaluations. And I did this with an essay. I was like, hey, I'm a coach. I can do this. And then I also did mentoring as well. I did volunteering. I did career counseling with the universities in Hong Kong. Those are paid roles. Then I did workshops for schools as well as for organizations. Then I sat on boards. And then I also did team building, right? Like, think about it. You could say she's so inconsistent, but no, I'm not. I have no idea what I like. So I just try everything. And what I don't like, I move on, right? Then I went to content creation about coaching, self help, meditation. Then I'm blogging, and then I'm also writing. That's where the authorship came up. And then now I'm moving to course creation. So you can see it is nonstop. I'm constantly saying, oh, I tried that, don't really like it. Oh, try that, don't really like it, right? But the whole point is, what am I learning? Every time I do something, I learn something about myself. Okay, I don't like broccoli. I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't like, but I'm going to come back and try maybe fried Brussels sprouts. Okay, I'll try it. I still don't like Brussels sprouts, right? That's the whole point of you finding your excitement. It's evolving.
Did it feel weird or, you know, there's a great question from the audience around reflecting where you are now is very, very different from where you started.
Yeah.
And so this specific audience member, they feel like sometimes the hard work they did in those earlier domains was for nothing, in terms of knowledge gained. Did you
Mm.
ever feel like that reflecting on your engineering degree, changing careers, entrepreneurship? Where are you moving next? If yes, like how did you overcome that? If no, any words for
Yeah.
someone to sort of not get over those feelings, but move
Yeah.
past them?
Yeah. So I think when I was younger, yes, it's like, oh, why did I do this? Why did I take a nonprofit? Right. But
Mhm.
what I can offer now as wisdom to a younger self is, what are you learning instead? So maybe actually, let me show the one slide that might answer this. Is one of the I'm just jumping slides now.
All
That
good.
will help answer this. Is one of the questions is very like, have you made any choices you regret? And how do you feel? How do you deal with that? Very similar. And so there's a lens of regret versus mistakes. And so a mistake, and I can say this now in my older wisdom, but back then it felt some of the mistakes actually like I was regretting, for a while. But a mistake is actually regret that's died and given me a lesson, right? And that's probably and because you're feeling the regret, because the regret is actually a living entity, right? Regret feels alive because it's there. And the fact that you can say regret means it exists and you continue to have a relationship with what happened, right? With that decision. When you can accept what's happened, your reaction, whether the choice that you've made, and harvest what you've learned in that moment or over a few moments, could be years that the learning is happening. That's when the regret dies. And then you can say, yeah, it was a mistake. And here's what I learned. Right. And that's what self awareness is all about. Right. It's with being self aware that, wow, I did learn something. Wow, I'm different because of it. That's where you have choice. And the choice is, if this happened again, would you make the same mistakes? And so
If
I personally have made a lot of mistakes. I will say this. And I will, like,
yeah,
just is, right? But
Yeah, life is that.
I don't regret them, right? Because I know I say, oh, I've learned from it, right? Yeah. And like some of them have been like years in lessons. And that regret was very much alive during that time, right? Some are short in passing, but I think it's just to move on from it. You will at one point. But the point is, the more you live in it and feed it, so there's a saying, right? Your energy goes where your attention flows.
Hmm.
And so the more that you give it life, fire, the more that it burns, right? And so rather
How?
than just say like, hey, maybe what am I learning? What am I learning? Right. And so that might be a different lens. It's not to dismiss it, right?
Hmm.
Because it's happened, but it's to take a different perspective of looking at yourself.
How did for some of the perhaps bigger things that lived as regrets for longer, was it just I'm trying to think like, was it just doing that, learning, like really interrogating it and writing down what you learned or sitting with that over and over again? Oh, or
No,
just not. Oh,
well,
okay.
no, that's part of it. But there's also a
Okay.
question I want to ask is what keeps the regret alive?
Ooh.
Why is it so important we need to keep this alive? Unless the lesson is still being learned. And then you have choice. I'm going to go on a limb here and talk about my divorce. I'm
Okay.
actually in separation right now. That was a really long lesson.
Yeah.
And it was the point where I said, I'm going to divorce. And the choice was mine because that was a lesson that had to be learned. Or it was repeating, right? Over and over.
Hmm.
So I didn't regret getting married, but there was just some regrets around not communicating in the later years of our marriage. And it just kept replaying. I'm like, oh God, it's happening again and again and again. Well, then do I have choice to make a different decision? Right.
Yeah.
That's
I
those
mean,
are yeah.
a divorce is a long timeline, I think, for
Yeah.
deciding to try something different,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Yeah.
after a really big choice in the beginning. If we, just for the more simple things, what's the timeline for trying different things and then deciding to switch it up? How long does it take for you to realize you want to switch and try something different? I think what I'm trying to understand is like, when is it too soon? When is it too long? When is it just right? Looking back at my own life, it feels like sometimes, oh, I stayed there too long. Oh, I
Mm.
didn't stay there long enough.
Mm.
But I don't know if that's the right way to think about it. The more I listen to you talk about the way you're approaching things.
Yeah. Where's your probably again versus my probably? Right? Who defines what's right for you other than you?
I guess then hmm, how do I build a framework or a way
Mm.
to be able to know when I should switch, when I feel like it's right to switch it up?
Mm. So, there's a saying I like to use. I have it sticky on my wall. It says, Your mind is afraid of your heart. And it goes back to, are you ready to peel back some of the layers of the expectations, right? Because at the very end, your true self is going to be like, but I want that, right? And then another one's going to be like, no, 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 but like, you can't be titleless. How are you going to introduce yourself when you go to a meeting, like, let's say, um, a forum,
Yep.
right? And say, who do you work for? And say, and I still struggle with this when I meet people. People say, "What do you do?" Like, what? How do I answer? Do I say entrepreneur? Do I say? I still struggle. So I mean, the joke right now is like I just say I make soups, but I still struggle with this answer because I haven't let go of my own expectations that I need to answer the question.
Mm.
Right?
So
Yeah.
to know when to switch it up or try new things or whether you spent too long or too little is really just asking yourself how you feel about the decision to
Are
move
you okay
on.
with this right now? Am I okay being here now? And you might say, no, 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 I'm not. Okay, so why are you still here? But there's always going to be, oh, the title, oh, the money, oh, this,
Yeah.
oh, that, right? Then you are okay being there. Do you see? It's an
Yes,
internal
yes,
argument at the very end.
yes, yes. Um, I, I think this is really great. It really resonates. I quit my job that I'd spent like 6.5 years at,
Right?
um, in the summer of last year. And in some ways, I always ask myself, especially recently, if I'd spent too long there. But in some ways, at that moment, felt like the perfect time at the moment when I decided. It was
There you
kind of
go.
crazy. Just put my 2 weeks notice in,
Yep,
but I don't know if I could have done that earlier, really.
exactly. And you will never know because you don't live your life twice, right? And move on, right? What's next, right?
Um, how do you there's a couple different questions, and so I
Sure.
think maybe we'll pull this one first because it's related to the question about, people asking what do you do. Did you ever have an experience with an environment where people say you're kind of all over the place, like job interviews or that first introduction? How do you approach that response to when you say you've done a lot of different things with your life?
Thank you. If you think about it, the person who's asking this question is fascinating, has a lens, right? They're questioning by labeling that you're all over the place as not necessarily a good thing.
Yes.
So their lens and my lens are different, right? And so all I'll say is, oh, thank you. Yeah, I love it. And I love my journey, right? And so it's quite interesting how they're trying to impress probably their
Hmm.
eight on you because that's how they see the world. They see the world as a jumpy resume, someone who's done a lot of stuff as scatter-minded.
Hmm.
But what they're trying to say then is you're scatter-minded because that's how I see the world. And if they were like that, they would say they're scatter-minded themselves. So it's interesting how don't let other people impress their definitions on you.
So in a job interview, if I were like, "Hey, Lisa, reviewing your resume,
Yeah.
it seems like you're kind of all over the place, eh?"
Yeah.
How would you respond?
Yeah, I love it. Yes. And you know what I've learned from this is by being all over the place, I learned this, this, and this. I was able to grow like this. These experiences taught me this. And I've discovered that, you know what? Sometimes these environments aren't right for me. That's what I'm learning, right? So that's where this learning, I keep saying, what are you learning? What are you learning?
Hmm.
There's no right or wrong. At the end is, what are you learning? And again, here, I'm going to take a stab here is if the company does not value people who can learn and they want stability, then I might not work for them,
I love
right?
that. Taking
Because
the power back.
our definitions are different and what they value is different, right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
I love this. So as you're chasing all these things that you're trying, did you were doing a lot of different things outside of the workplace. Were there career or life mentors that helped you through this journey and exploration? Yes, no, and then if yes, like how did you find them? How did you find these people?
I think my honest answer is no,
Ooh.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't have any, no one really stands out to me. I did have managers that gave me very at the time critical feedback, but now I'm seeing it was good for me. So, for example, when I was at IBM, young, I was like, you wear jeans, but I wear like tighter jeans. And she's like, you shouldn't wear tight jeans. And I was really offended, but then I understood, right? So I think at the end, it was just taking feedback as my own mentoring. But at the end, it was just me. And maybe that's why it was all over the place because it's just basically me on my own, just trying to feel what I liked, right? So,
That's fair.
honest answer for me is no, I didn't have any formal mentors
Hmm.
ever. Um, no one comes to mind actually. Like I had really good bosses, but
Yeah.
nothing, no one that I can really pinpoint. Yeah. So you don't need one. It's basically what I'm saying. I mean, if you had one, great, but they have to connect with you and make sure it's in the right direction, right? But if you don't have one,
Yeah.
that's okay too. Then even better, you follow the beat of your own drum.
The beat of your own drum. I think that can be a scary. I mean, that is what life is, living your
Exactly.
life the way you want to.
Yeah.
But I think there's something nice about having a mentor But
Agree.
perhaps that's also a crutch. I don't know. I'm
I don't know
exploring
either.
this idea in real time with you.
I wouldn't know because I didn't have one, so I can't really say, right?
Hmm, hmm.
Although if you do have one, then what are you learning from them?
It
That's it.
always goes back to that.
Always. Always. Yeah.
Um, and so then, as you are a person figure trying all these different things, was there a particular process or technique you used to brainstorm the business ideas or find those problems to solve or the things of highest excitement?
All right. It's got to be a combination of two. Okay. So first is your instincts will always serve you. Keep that in mind. But there are a lot of frameworks out there. For example, um, for startups, what's the problem statement, right? And the fact that if you're working on something, there's an idea, there's got to be a problem somewhere that you're seeing. So the problem statement for me with the soup lady was really around like, all right, second and third generation Asians, how do we know what's in the soup? Right? Because there's nothing really captured knowledge. Everything's either in Chinese, and I don't necessarily read Chinese, but for like
Same.
English speakers, right? So I was like, okay, but I'm the problem statement. I was my own problem, right? And so what I was trying to fill was a need for myself first. It wasn't a problem out there. So there is that thinking is that if you're finding there are problems that exist for you, go and create something and fix it for you first. And then I'm sure there are going to be other people out there who have the same problem.
Oh,
The question that we always try, and investors will always ask you in VC is like, how big is this problem statement? What is it worth? Right? My problem is not worth very big because it's a very niche market, right?
yeah.
Second, third generation Asians who want Chinese soups, pretty niche, right? And it's hard to say it's got a big ROI if I'm going to go
Hmm,
pitch this out as a big idea. But
hmm.
I love it. I don't care if it's small.
Ah,
I
that's how you
love that
know
it's
the
niche.
excitement.
Exactly, right? It's not about the money.
So, at what point in chasing this, you found the soup thing like super exciting? Did you decide to monetize or
Mm,
begin to believe that
okay.
what you had was worth monetizing and growing into
Yeah,
business?
yeah,
Because you
yeah,
mentioned it's like a problem you solve for yourself, and
yeah,
then it's not a very big
yeah,
market.
yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go on a limb here too and share another screen. This is the monetization of what I have today, right? And it's not in full dollar amounts, but I'm gonna break down how things work right now for me, given that I'm not full time. So the soup lady's still a hobby, to be honest with you. I don't see her ever growing to scale. Maybe the things down here might, but even then. So right now, when I said I do a push model, what that means is I like creating and sending stuff out. I create and push
Mhm.
everything. Like everything I do right now is basically based on my schedule because I don't like people telling me what to do, other than the coaching, which I'm still enjoying, right? So basically, I have a blog, I create content, and I push it out into these channels. So Google Ads is something I was like, hey, I can do Google Ads. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So I'm serving ads, making 100 a month Canadian. Amazon affiliate, right? I'm like, okay, what else can I do? All right, okay, I like talking because people are asking me, what's the pot that you use? What's the teacup that you're using? I'm like, okay, fine. Let's see if I can monetize this. Great. Amazon affiliate are one of the easiest ways to do it. There are other ways to do it.
Mhm.
Other affiliates is the other one where you can go directly to companies. So if you have all the knives, the pots,
Mhm.
ingredients, go direct, they'll give you a link, put it on your site, fine. The idea is to have traffic, right?
Yeah.
And because the soup lady's been up for 19 years, 18 years, she's got good authority if you're talking about SEO, right?
Yes.
Although I think she could still be optimized more, but I don't care right now to go there and invest that. And then YouTube, I'm scaling. So there's a minimum threshold that you need to get to. And again, she's a niche market, so she's growing over
Mhm.
time. But I haven't put that much time. Like I post maybe once a week right now, which is not a lot.
Mhm.
And so this is basically how I'm monetizing Soup Lady. I also do other things because I'm a content creator on Facebook as well. So Facebook is by invitation only. There's some programs by invitation. TikTok, we don't have the Canadian Creators Fund,
Yeah.
so can't monetize TikTok, right? But Instagram, you could also monetize through brand deals. That's it. And then there are creator tests like YouTube, they'll say like for doing surveys and stuff. So once in a while they'll reach out if you have enough scale and
Mhm.
experience. The other thing about Soup Lady is like, all right, cookbook. So I've got requests for a cookbook. And I'll talk about how to do, if you're thinking about authorship, even writing, right? There's so many ways to write if you love it. And so, yeah, that's on the table now. I'm talking with agents right now, but it's kind of like pitter pattering because I'm busy with other things. Doing a web-based app is something else that's on my mind that I partner with a friend that she does like other products with
Yep.
soups. And then other continued affiliate marketing, right, is the other piece. And so there's not a lot. It's enough to pay for, I think, for sure the operations of it, the hosting, primarily hosting domains, all that stuff, right? And a little bit of pocket money, but it is scalable, right? I think if you find the right topics,
Mhm.
you can definitely scale that. The soup lady is just very niche, but I still love it, right? And I still love playing with this space. I'm not going to go. And people have told me you should go into cooking, like broaden your category.
Mhm.
No, right? I don't want to, right? But you can. And some cooking people they do actually really well if they find a specific niche.
Mhm.
And I know many, right? And so it's in content creation is an interesting domain that we can all play with anytime, right? You just have to find something that you love talking about and you don't care if no one's there, right?
Mhm.
And at the end, my people find me and I know this, right? And I know their demographic, I know who they are, very specific, super niche. The middle piece I want to talk about is all right, this part is definitely the piece that I've managed to scale a lot more. And it's got a lot more legs. And this is the coaching piece. So with the publisher, to be honest, you cannot retire on book sales if you're not a bestseller in terms of your Mel Robbins, the people that can sell like thousands and thousands of books at a time, right? And they repeat over and over, right? They have a platform. Those people are authors as life authors, right? They're actually personalities actually, and they just have books. There's many, right? And so there's a lot of professor like that, Adam Grant. They're fantastic, Brene Brown. Um, or you're writing like fiction, right? And some of those
Mhm.
also do well as well. How it works is, I can talk about this. There's like the scale of publishing now is either self-publish or full publishing service, and everything between exists. However, if you're going to go Amazon, which is the easiest, KDP. So for me right now, I'm going through a publisher. Ebook is Amazon because we have an ebook. They'll take we take 70%. Amazon takes 30. My publisher takes 30, and then I take 70. So it's 70% essentially. If it's a hard copy book, Amazon takes 40, my publisher takes 30, and that's what I get. So my Q4 sales were about 350 royalties for me. I cannot retire on book sales. Okay, I'm just going to be very honest. I wrote it because I wanted to and I loved it. And I think it was a journey for me, right?
Oh.
Um, However, if you want to do KDP, so also my sister's going KDP, she's self published. Amazon takes 40% and you get 60, right? But KDP
Mhm.
is not as easy. You need marketing and sales. At the end, it's still a
Mhm.
product. You have to sell it, right? But for those who love writing, I would encourage start with like short story contests, right? There's all these local contests, especially in Waterloo and Toronto, that just like saying, hey, it's $1,000, right? Like for short stories, poems get published, right? Just write because you love it. And then within this project called Me, which was actually called two other things before this. So this is me being inconsistent, right? Just changing my brand because I don't care. Um, and I know because I work in a retail, they're like the branding is so important. I'm like, yeah, I understand, but I don't care, right? And so I actually still do a lot of mentor coaching for certifications, and I do a lot of private coaching. And people say, "What's your rate?" I started with zero, to be honest. I was charging zero, and then I started 50. Then actually now it's like between 150 to 350 USD, and sometimes higher depending on who the client is, and it does
Yeah.
depend on the client. And so again, can I retire on coaching? Yeah, maybe, right? Depends how much I want to do, right? And how many clients I want to take. That's on me. And then I'm also doing consulting on the side. This is just kind of because I've been approached because of the industry I work in. My
Yeah.
rate's like 350 US an hour right now. And that's like talking about like, all right, if we want to set up, expand retail businesses. So it's all primarily around retail, right? People expanding stuff, fine. That's that. And then I'm building on the side now is like this other company too is the leader as a coach, right? And there's going to be a self-serve course. There's private coaching and organizational practices. And then I did Coach Masters Academy, which is the coaching school, which was actually pretty profitable.
Mhm.
It's just a lot of manpower, but that was fun, a lot of work, but also it wasn't for me at the time, right? And so I let that go, right? And so that's kind of where I am right now, in terms of, well, how do you eat? Right? You have a job. I'm like, well, no, I can't. I it's I'll be honest, it's not like as easy as my full-time job, right? Just show up at
Yeah.
work, get off, and the paycheck comes every 2 weeks, right? But I do have a lot of flexibility. I get to choose the projects I want, the clients that I want, right? Create the content when I want it. And I have to make soups anyway, right? Like for dinner, I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna make the soup. Let's just film it, right? And then I'll push it out, right? And so that's it. I'm playing.
Do you, this isn't a question in the audience, but it just came to mind. Do you feel happier, Lisa, now than when you were doing the corporate career?
Different happiness.
Different
I
happiness.
think when I was doing corporate, my happiness was the ones that I thought I should have in terms of um, career progression, title,
Mm.
money, right? And there's no right or wrong in this, right? That's what we've been imprinted with culturally, first of all. And then
Yeah.
also being, in a competitive environment at Waterloo, right? There's also like, all right, when we graduated, it was like everyone ranked their salaries. That's what was happening. I don't know if it's happening now, but
Oh
when I
gosh.
graduated my year, it was like, how much did people get? And everyone was writing what their salary offers were because it was that good, right? Because we were
Hmm.
in a .com. And so, yeah, it was important at the time. So yes, I was happy then. I'm happy now. It's a different happy. My happy's changed, right?
Mm.
And that transition was where it was hard because, like, oh, I'm not happy anymore. But am I happy here? And then you reevaluate. But you have to be self aware in order to say, are you happy or not? Right?
Yes.
That's the amazing thing is, yeah, yeah, I was happy then because I loved it. It was easy, right? I was climbing and traveling and doing what I loved, right, as well in corporate. It's just changed. That's all.
I think that answer is really beautiful in highlighting the power of self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
life's totally different and it is a different type of happy, but it is still happy.
It is. Yeah.
Um,
I'm
you've made
still
a lot of
struggling though, to be honest with you. When people ask me what I do, I feel like I have to give a response. Say, I used to be this, right? Like even in my
Mhm.
profile, I don't need to say I'm X, this. Why? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yes, yes. It's
Right?
that societal
Yes.
perception, you're a high achieving woman,
Yes.
like
So
um I think, you know, following that, you're a high achieving woman, you want to experiment a lot. There's only 24 hours in a day,
mm,
and there's a lot of like gender specific interior household duties sometimes that
mm,
we're expected to do. Um, did you ever have people, I mean, it might have been different when you were in Asia and domestic help was sort of the norm, but in other parts of your life, was it taken not well that you were prioritizing other things over maybe the identity of being like the domestic person and a mom and stuff like that?
no, I think the question is, first of all, is like, what is the right definition? Right?
Mm.
Again, I go back challenging is what does our internal dictionary say? And then my children are getting old, they're older now, right? And so it's
Mhm.
kind of like, hey, you guys have to have responsibility here as well. And then I let some things go, right? The house is not as clean as I would like it to be, right? The laundry is like hanging, and then you take what you need to wear, it goes back in the wash and it cycles, right? And
Yeah.
that's okay, right? My sister will come over and say, your house is so cluttered. I'm like, yep, I love it. Right? Because again, she's making a judgment on cleanliness, but it's my house. I like it. I'm okay with it. If you're not okay,
How did you become okay with it, I guess?
that's part of it, right? It's learning to accept yourself and no one it's I go to the beat of my drum,
Hmm.
right? And that's I think that will happen over growth and time. I was never like that, right? I was very like had to be like, straight A student, do this, do that. And that's why I think a lot of overachievers kind of like that because they're not our own expectations. Just saying that, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Mhm.
It's been a
Exactly.
hard journey to let go of some things. My house isn't super clean. I live with a rabbit and a cat and another human being. We live in a very small condo. It is what it is, but it's
Exactly.
hard to sometimes look at it and be like, "Ah, I have to be, I mean, yeah, I have to be okay with it, right? Like this is my
And you
life.
are, because if you weren't, you've done something about it, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then you might as well accept it. I'm just saying, right? Like at the very end,
Yeah.
your behaviors show this. It's like, well, I'm okay with it because I haven't done anything different. So why am I judging myself like this when I haven't
Hmm.
really done anything different?
Hmm. I think it's being aware of your self-judgment and
Exactly.
then moving
That's
beyond that.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
When you made all these big decisions over the course of your life, some of them being very big, like moving to Asia and then quitting your job, was there any particular decision-making framework? I know you mentioned the heart thing. I'm just trying to dig into there to see like,
No,
was it just like
no.
regular check-ins with yourself that are
Yeah.
scheduled
It was like,
somehow?
do I feel like it? Do I feel like it? Yeah, let's do it. Right. Yeah, and that was it. Um, yeah, yeah.
How did you be okay to just do it? I know that's the Nike
Okay.
slogan, but
So actually, maybe the genuine response to that was I was scared more of staying.
okay.
So there's going to be two levers always. One is you're so excited that you'll go, or you're so
Hmm.
scared of staying that you'll go. And you have to pick which one is for you. And it sounds like when you quit your job, it was you didn't want to stay. You're so scared of staying that
Yeah.
you went. So
Yes.
it'll be
And
one of
I,
two levers in your life. It'll be that you're so excited that you're gonna go. I'm gonna go, or you're so scared of staying that you're gonna say I'm gonna go.
okay. And
It'll be
then
one of the two.
just being aware of those emotions when they
Correct.
just come up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And be okay with it. That's it. Yeah.
Um, in your journey, especially with the book, it's more of like a self-coaching book,
Yeah.
than being coached book. How did you come to the process of writing the coaching book like this in a self-coaching way versus maybe something more self-helpy?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you guys are the right age. Who has read Choose Your Own Adventures? Do you guys know what that is? Okay, that's the wrong generation. For those who
Uh,
know what I'm talking about, okay, Google it. So I actually bought the book for my kids. There's a book series when I was growing up. It's literally called Choose Your Own Adventure. So you basically read the first page and then you have two scenarios. And they say pick one scenario, you have to jump to a page. And they're kind of like a little bit graphical as well, advanced novels, like
oh,
graphical
okay.
novels.
Yes, yes. Like
And these are
Goosebumps back in the day.
yeah, these are real books. And so I kind of leaned on that. I love that model and I loved it. And yeah, I was kind of just like, well, there aren't any self-help books like that because I mean, whose journey is linear anyway? There's no
Mm.
way. And so I was like, okay, let's just try it. And so that's kind of the inspiration for that. Yeah.
Do you, knowing that, life isn't linear, it's not a series necessarily
Mhm.
of, I mean, do you think life is a series of predetermined events? Or if we do control our destiny, h how do we know what to strive for?
Okay, that's a deep question. And I
Yes.
know it's very, everyone will have their own lens because there's two sides. One will say, yes, I have choice, and no, it's predetermined, right? I can see how both lens exist, which
Mhm.
is fine. Does it matter whether it's predestined or not? I think that's the genuine, like, does it matter what answer it is? Even if you knew, so what? Right?
Would it change the way I live my life?
Exactly. Exactly. It shouldn't, right?
Probably not. Yeah.
Exactly. So that question is irrelevant, right? That's basically it. So don't spend your energy thinking about it because it doesn't matter at the very end. But choices is when you have more awareness, then you're like, okay, well, I'm aware that this is how I behave. Do I want to behave like this next time? I have choice. Oh, I'm aware that I don't like being in this situation. I'm aware, right? All right. Do I like it? How much do I not like it? Right. And then move on. Right. And so it's just being aware of you. That's all, right? At the very end.
What are some tools or tips to build that self-awareness?
That's a good one. Yeah. Journaling is always a good one. Talking to yourself in a recorded session. Like if you're going to say it,
Whoa.
right? Talk to yourself. And some of us do. It's like, oh, I don't like that. We actually think to ourselves in our own
Hmm.
heads very often,
Hmm.
but write it down, right? Or record them. So audio journals are good, but then have it transcribed and look for keywords, right? Like if you find yourself saying should, this is an interesting one. Try it, right? I should this, I
Yeah.
should that, I should not. Like we say shoulds to ourselves a lot. That's all self-judgment. And we don't realize it, right? And so
Yeah.
that's one. Another one is talk to a friend, right? And say, what am I repeating? Right? What am I asking questions? Right? Am I coach is always helpful, talking to people. So it's finding ways to mirror, like see yourself because we can't see ourselves sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And just can you stand outside of yourself, right? That's probably the hardest part is can you stand outside of yourself objectively?
I
It
don't
takes
know if I
practice.
can.
It takes practice. It takes practice, but you can. We all can at some point, right?
And so journaling, audio journaling, coaching, the book, Hello World Me. w- Is there an end to this journey? Like, is there a way for me to know myself fully? Sort of like a math problem. There's always a solution. You can just solve it.
What's the end state for who you are to evolve to? Who defines that? I
That's
know I
fair.
always see I'm rhetorical in my questions because that means there's no answer, right? Like, who are you supposed to be at the very end?
That's a great question, actually. I've never thought about that. Besides, like, old enough or old-ish, I guess. So dying early isn't like that scary. I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard question to answer. I guess who I would like to be at the end is happy,
Okay.
loved, but that's not very concrete.
Sure it is. Because you define it. It's your
Mm,
definition, right? Only you will know. So that means if you're saying it's hard to answer, it means you've not quite narrowed what the definition means to you.
And so there's more self-awareness,
Correct.
self-coaching,
Exactly.
self-asking.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Um, shall we go to any tips you have to get started on finding your highest excitement?
Yeah. Okay, this is good. One page, and then we'll wrap up. So the first thing I can't see because this is in the way. The little zoom bar. Okay, first one is follow the most exciting threads, and you might have many of them, but there's always one that's going to be more exciting. And I know some people say, well, if you're working on like so many things, do you just drop it? Sometimes I do actually. I'll just forget about like the soup lady and working on things. But again, right, like that's your call. But follow them, explore, right? Find your anchors. What anchors you? A true litmus test about whether it's your highest excitement or not is could you give it away for free? You create
Ooh,
to give away. And I'm dead serious. Take that mindset, right? That is the true test. Can you create stuff because you love it so much that you're going to give it for free? It's hard, I
that's
know.
hard. Yeah, that's a very hard question.
Exactly. But then that you'll really know if that's really your highest excitement and something that you're willing to do, right?
Mhm.
Find your tribe. And this is an interesting one. And we hear this all the time, but it's actually the people who can expand your possibility. Meaning, not the people who say, why would you do that? Or what's going on there? Right? Those type of questions are not people who can expand your possibility. They're people who are like, okay, I'm not going to judge them, right? But they're not people who are going to help you grow like this and going, oh my God, that's amazing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. As long as you're happy, then I will be like, oh my God, that's amazing, right? That is someone who will accept that's unconditional in that sense, right? And which is quite interesting. And then it's always about what am I learning? It's not about winning or losing. It's really what you're experiencing. And yes, we could say, I win if I have more money. Is it about money though at the very end, right? And so that's where you'll eventually grow into a certain space for yourself. So just some tips to try, see where that goes.
Love those. They're very doable, I think. Leaning into what brings me joy to the point where I can create something and just give it away for free.
Yeah.
Finding people who, in some ways, unconditionally support me trying the craziest or whatever I lean
Yes,
into.
exactly. Yes.
And then keeping that mindset and being really deliberate about reflecting on what I'm learning and not necessarily judging the outcome of that
Yeah.
experience as good
Yeah.
or bad.
Yeah. If you want to go make purple wigs, love it. Go and do it. Try it. But if you throw this idea out there, people are like, what? How big is the
Yeah.
market, right? That's the first question. What's your market size? Have you done your consumer research? What? But I love it. But you didn't answer these questions, right? So it's interesting how a lot of people will try to ring fence, right? What their own perspective is on you for your excitement. But it's their own fears that are in the way, not yours.
That makes sense. I guess being self-aware of myself makes it easier for me to know when folks are putting their lens on the things
Yeah.
that
They're
I'm trying to
probably,
try out.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
probably is a three or a four. We had a four probably and a three likely, right? So
How do I, through this process, I think this will be the last question before I
yeah,
wrap it up. I'm a big overthinker, deeply, in some ways, anxious person, in some way not.
yeah,
And so the idea of really leaning into, say, my joy and creating purple wigs freaks me out, like deeply. Um, so how do I move past that? How do I move past that and lean into the thing that brings me the most joy?
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna answer this question. Someone sent a question out that's similar um with this question. The question is at the top. How do you get rid of anxiety and sometimes overthinking an issue, a problem, or difficulty to achieve inner peace or your highest excitement? So the first thing I'll always ask, what are you questioning in yourself? Right? Overthinking is your mind. Remember, I said your mind and heart. It's response in overcoming the doubt. Because your mind also doesn't believe your heart, right? The rational, the logic is like, no, there's no way, right? And it's actually you're echoing society's expectations, like everyone else's
Mhm.
voice of the world, right? And so the word over already means you don't need to do it, and yet you still overthink, right? That's where I'm going. It's like overthinking by itself as a state already means that you had the answer, but you didn't believe it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, again, what I like is that it really distills the answers to a lot of these questions really distill back to being deliberate about knowing myself,
Yep.
framing everything as what I'm learning,
Yep.
and really not pushing back, but being aware that the reason I'm saying, oh, I'm overthinking, is this voice of the world, someone else's lens, that I don't really need to pay attention to. It's not me.
But we can't distinguish, right? Like that's
Yeah,
where the
the
overthinking.
self-awareness.
That's what you had a position first, but you're questioning it. So it's funny
Mhm.
because you're questioning yourself. At the end, you're judging yourself, right? You're not trusting yourself. A part of you is not trusting the other part of you. That's what it means.
And self-awareness will allow me to
Exactly.
bridge those two
Yeah.
parts.
And which part
Ah,
is the right one, right? Which part?
I guess what I'm learning from this conversation is they're all me,
They
and there's
are?
not really a right or wrong. It's
Nope.
just what I'm feeling in the heart to lean into in this moment, which will
Yeah.
change with those
Yep.
two levers you mentioned.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any last words for our audience today, Lisa? This was a really nourishing conversation. It's given me a lot to really think on as I guess a younger person.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I really do want to help. So I do have so what I'm offering is like I also want to do give away, right? And so this is what I do want to give away like as much as I can in capacity. I'm going to share my slide again. Sorry.
no, all good.
So what I want to do is I actually do want to give away the book and a complimentary session for anyone who wants to lean in and says, oh, you know what, I want to start somewhere, but I'm not sure where. And anyways, I do. So there's gonna be three people that I really do want to help and support. So it'll be the book plus like let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on with you, what's happening. Just fill in the form on like this project called me.com and then I'll draw three people and then send you the book and then let's set up a session. But that's me doing stuff as a giveaway, right? Like, and this is what I mean
Yeah.
about like I really don't mind creating stuff. Like I'm also mentor, like this is what the mentoring piece is like all free, right? So I've got like four mentors right now, mentees. I don't
Hmm.
mind, right? And so what I want to do is also like people who are kind of like stuck, just yeah, find me, even on LinkedIn, whatever, drop me questions. Always happy to help and answer anything, just to get you started on the thinking. And Yeah, be prepared that I will ask rhetorical questions.
No, I think it's great. I can personally attest to the fact that sessions you've done with our council last year were really interesting around even what it meant to mentor another peer as a peer
Mm,
mentor,
yeah.
using the techniques, like honestly using the things that you taught us in my regular life with friends or coworkers, um, has made me seem wiser than I am, which
Okay.
might be, yeah. And reading your book has been incredible, very illuminating. Um, it's really challenged me to sit and think to myself about why I feel or say or ask questions the way I do. And so I'm going to share one last slide to close us out tonight. Thank you everyone for joining us for the conversation I'm going to think about for a while now. If you're interested in joining us at more sessions like these, feel free to follow the University of Waterloo Recent Engineering Alumni Council. We have a website, LinkedIn, Instagram, all those fun things. And then, if you're interested in what Lisa's talked about and want more support or want to, subscribe and learn more, really dig into what it means to lean into your highest excitement, we've got links to Lisa's stuff in both the chat and on screen here today. You can get her book, or you can subscribe to the This Project Called Me.com website and be entered in her little giveaway.